the hooded stranger in the cargo bay. The cargo bay smelled like metal, oil, and dust, just like every other day on the outer colony docks. Jack wiped his forehead with a dirty cloth, his hands rough from years of loading crates and fixing broken machines. His shift had just started, and already his back was sore. He looked around at the alien workers, all dressed in the same gray uniforms, their faces hidden under hoods or masks. Most were quiet, heads down, moving crates from the transport ships like machines. But one caught his eye. She was smaller than the others, thin, almost fragile-looking, and she wore her hood deeper than the rest. Her hands trembled slightly as she lifted a heavy metal container, but she didn't complain, didn't ask for help. She moved like she didn't want to be seen, like she was hiding something. Jack walked over, pretending to check a manifest on his datapad. He glanced at her boots. They were clean. Too clean for someone working in this mess. Her hands didn't have the usual grime or bruises of a cargo worker either. Strange. "Hey," Jack said casually. "You new here?" The girl didn't answer, just nodded once, her face still hidden under the shadow of her hood. "You got a name tag?" he asked, trying to keep his tone friendly. She shook her head quietly, then turned to grab another crate. Jack frowned. Something didn't feel right. All workers, even the lowest ones, had tags, tracking chips, something. He checked the worker list on his pad. Scrolling through the names, no match for her height or ID code. She wasn't on the list. He watched as she struggled with a container almost too heavy for her frame. Out of instinct, he stepped forward and grabbed the other side, helping her lift it. Their hands touched for a second, and he felt it. Cold skin, smoother than any laborer he'd worked with. Her head turned slightly, but still she didn't speak. He saw a glimmer of something under her sleeve. A mark, almost like a tattoo, glowing faintly before it disappeared beneath the fabric again. Then a sharp clang echoed through the bay. A worker had dropped a crate, causing tools and parts to scatter across the floor. Everyone jumped, but the girl flinched harder than anyone else, dropping the container she was holding. Jack stepped back, watching as she quickly adjusted her hood and tried to hide behind a larger worker. His curiosity grew. "Hey, you okay?" and he asked again, stepping closer. She nodded quickly but didn't look at him. Jack sighed and decided to leave her alone for now, but his mind kept spinning. Later, during a break, Jack sat alone behind a stack of crates, eating a protein bar, and sipping from his flask. He noticed the girl again, sitting quietly away from the others, still hiding her face. A cold draft blew through the cargo bay as the outer doors adjusted for pressure. She shivered, pulling her arms tight around herself. Jack stood and walked toward her, pulling off his jacket and offering it. "You'll freeze in here," he said softly. She looked up, and for the first time he saw her eyes. They were a deep silver, glowing softly in the shadows. Not common alien eyes. Not like any he had seen before. She didn't take the jacket, but she didn't move away either. He noticed her lips parting like she wanted to speak, but no words came out. "You don't have to talk," Jack whispered. "But you don't belong here, do you?" And the girl didn't answer, but a tear slipped from her eye, catching the faint light. She quickly turned away, hiding again under her hood. Their shift ended an hour later, and workers began filing out of the bay to the sleeping quarters. Jack lingered, pretending to fix a panel near the exit. The girl was the last to leave, and as she walked past him, she suddenly stopped. She looked around to make sure no one else was watching, then slowly reached up and pulled back her hood. Jack's eyes widened. Her skin shimmered faintly like moonlight, smooth and flawless. Her features delicate, noble, even royal. Not dirty, not beaten, not like a worker. Around her neck hung a small metal pendant, cracked down the middle, shaped like a royal crest he had seen in old war reports. She looked at him, directly now, and whispered just one word. "Please." Then she pulled the hood back over her head and vanished into the hallway shadows. Jack stood frozen, heart pounding, brain racing. Who was she? What was she doing here? Why did she look like the heir of a fallen empire? One thing was clear. She was no ordinary worker, and now Jack was involved, whether he liked it or not. Jack couldn't sleep that night. He kept seeing those silver, eyes glowing in the dark and that broken crest around her neck. The words she whispered, "Please," kept echoing in his mind. He had seen thousands of workers in his life, but never anyone like her. The next morning he returned to the docks early, pretending to check shipment logs. His eyes scanned the crowd. There she was. Same hood, same quiet movements, same effort to blend in. But now he knew the truth, or at least a piece of it. He walked toward her carefully, making sure no one noticed. When he got close, she tensed, her back stiff, like she was ready to run. "Relax," Jack said softly. "I'm not going to tell anyone." She still didn't speak, but her breathing slowed just a little. "I want to help," he added, "but I need to know who you are." She looked around, making sure no one was watching, then slipped him a small metal chip. "Don't plug it into public systems," she whispered so low he barely heard her. "Only personal tech." Jack nodded, slipping the chip into his sleeve. He worked the rest of the day with his head down, heart racing. He didn't plug the chip until late at night, inside his personal quarters behind 3 layers of security firewalls. The moment the chip activated, a hologram flickered above his desk. It showed a palace on fire, soldiers dragging people out, and a child hiding behind a marble statue. A voice began narrating, a female voice, shaky and full of pain. "My name is Vela Zarath," the voice said, "daughter of Queen Thalis of the Zarathi Empire. We were betrayed by our own council. They opened the palace gates to Dominion forces. My family was executed. I was smuggled out by loyal guards, but they were killed. I've been running ever since." The holo ended with an image of a younger Vela, wearing the full royal crest, perfect skin, glowing eyes, a calm but fierce expression. Jack stared at it, speechless. The girl in the image was the same hooded worker now sleeping in a cold dock bunk just a few meters from dangerous bounty hunters and blind machines. Jack didn't know what to think. He wasn't a hero, not a fighter, just a dock tech with worn boots and an aching back. But he couldn't unsee what he saw, couldn't ignore the fear in her voice or the truth in her eyes. The next day he approached her again during lunch break, near a broken forklift where no cameras reached. "I saw the holo," he whispered. "I believe you." Her shoulders dropped slightly, and for the first time, she looked him in the eyes without fear. "I can't stay here long," she said, voice barely above a breath. "They're getting closer." "Who?" Jack asked. "The Dominion," she said. "They think I'm dead, but if they find me alive, they'll finish what they started." Jack thought fast. The docks were crawling with scanners and guards, but no one cared enough to check deeper. Lazy officials, cheap security. They all assumed no one important passed through here, but that also meant it was the perfect place to hide. Or be caught. "You need to get off-world," Jack said. "But transport logs are monitored." "I have no credits," she replied. "No allies, no voice." Jack glanced around and leaned closer. "I know someone. A guy who owes me a favor." Vela hesitated, her eyes narrowing. "Why would you help me?" "I'm just a stranger to you," Jack shrugged. "You looked cold and scared. And you said please." She stared at him for a long time, then finally nodded. "All right." Later that evening, Jack took her to a hidden tunnel beneath the dock floor. It was once used by smugglers but long abandoned. The air was musty and thick with dust, but safe from scanners. They walked in silence until they reached an old steel door covered in grime. Jack knocked 3 times, paused, then knocked twice more. The door creaked open and a large man with cybernetic eyes stared down at them. "Jack," the man growled. "What mess have you brought this time?" "Oh, just a traveler," Jack said calmly, looking to disappear. The man raised an eyebrow as he looked at Vela, but said nothing. He let them in. The small bunker was filled with parts, weapons, and a ship engine mid-repair. Jack pulled the man aside. "She's in danger. Real danger." The man sighed. "You don't usually lie, so I'll listen. But I don't take passengers without payment." Jack took off his comm bracelet and handed it over. "Worth 5,000 credits." "Take it," the man grumbled, but nodded. "Fine," she She leaves tomorrow night. Vela watched the whole thing quietly, but her hand trembled slightly at her side. When they left the bunker, she whispered, "You didn't have to do that." "I know," Jack replied. "But I did." As they reached the surface again, a cold wind blew through the docking yard. Vela pulled her hood tighter, hiding her royal face once again. Jack knew things were going to get harder now, because helping a runaway worker was one thing. But hiding a fugitive princess? That was a death sentence. The rain came down like needles as Jack and Vela stepped out from the cargo yard tunnel under cover of night. The sky was dark with pollution, and neon signs flickered weakly above the dirty streets of the lower district. This wasn't the part of the colony shown in travel brochures. This was the Undercity, where shadows lived and people disappeared without questions. Vela walked close behind Jack, her head low, hood pulled tightly over her face. They passed rusty market stalls, beggars with hollow eyes, and thugs leaning against walls with glowing knives. Jack kept his hand near his sidearm, but he knew even that wouldn't save them if things went bad. "This way," Jack whispered, turning down a narrow alley that stank of engine fuel and mold. Vela stepped carefully, trying not to slip on the wet stone. Her eyes scanned every corner, alert like a hunted animal used to danger. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice soft. "Someone I trust," Jack said. "A rebel who disappeared after the war. He hates the Dominion more than anyone." Vela didn't respond, but her pace quickened. She knew time was running out, and staying in one place too long meant death. They reached a metal hatch buried beneath a pile of trash. Jack knocked in a strange rhythm. 4 short taps, 1 long one. Nothing happened at first. Then a small scanner lens popped out and flashed red light in Jack's face. A robotic voice said, "Jack Carter, unauthorized access attempt." Jack leaned closer and whispered, "Tell Marcus I still owe him a bottle of fire brew." A long silence followed. Then the hatch creaked open with a groan. A short hallway led to a hidden door, and standing in front of it was a man with a robotic arm and a wide scar down his face. "Jack," he said with a grunt. "I thought you were dead." "Still breathing," Jack said with a tired smile. "I need a favor." Marcus's eyes shifted to Vela, then narrowed. "Who's the ghost?" Before Jack could speak, Vela stepped forward, pulled down her hood just enough to show her glowing silver eyes. Marcus's face froze, his expression turning from suspicion to shock. He stepped back, whispering, "By the stars." "It's true." Inside the underground safe house, Marcus locked the doors and activated jammer fields. "We don't say names here," he said firmly. "Walls have ears." Vela nodded, sitting on a worn metal bench near a heater. Her fingers curled tightly around the broken crest hanging from her neck. Jack paced the room. "She needs off-world transport, somewhere the Dominion can't reach. She's been hunted too long." Marcus poured himself a drink, the bottle shaking in his hand. "I heard rumors but didn't believe it," he said. "The whole royal line was declared dead. Anyone caught protecting her gets executed. On sight." "Then don't get caught," Jack replied sharply. "Help us disappear." Marcus looked at Vela again, longer this time. "There's a smuggler ship leaving in 2 days," he said slowly. "Headed to the outer asteroid belts. They don't ask questions, but the price is high." "She has no money," Jack said. "I gave up my comm bracelet already." Marcus leaned back in his chair thinking, "There might be another way," he said finally, "but it's risky." "What is it?" Vela asked. "There's an old service tunnel below the central terminal," he explained. "Leads to a hangar used by black market traders. It's abandoned, but you might sneak through if you don't run into patrols. Can you get us a map?" Jack asked. "I'll do better," Marcus said, standing up. "I'll take you there myself." Jack blinked, surprised. "You sure?" "I thought you retired from trouble." Marcus gave a tired smile. "I did. But the girl's mother once saved my life in battle. Maybe it's time I return the favor." The next evening, the 3 of them slipped out of the safe house and entered the tunnel system under the main colony. The air was heavy with dampness, and the walls were covered in old resistance symbols faded by time. Vela ran her fingers over one. a symbol of her mother's banner, the flame of unity. She felt something stir inside her, a warmth she hadn't felt since her family died. Not just fear, but strength. Not just survival, but purpose. As they moved deeper, footsteps echoed ahead. Marcus signaled them to stop. Crouching behind a pillar, 2 Dominion enforcers passed by, scanning with flashlights and drones. Jack held his breath, hand gripping Vela's tightly, her pulse fast under his touch. Once the guards passed, they moved quickly, reaching the access door to the smuggler hangar. Marcus hacked the lock, fingers moving fast over the panel. Just as the door clicked open, an alarm blared. They triggered. A motion sensor. Marcus shouted, "Go! I'll hold them off." "No!" Jack yelled, but Marcus pushed him through the door. "You have a queen to protect." Marcus barked, sealing the door behind them. Vela stood frozen, tears in her eyes, but Jack grabbed her hand and pulled her forward. The hangar stretched out before them, dark, quiet, and full of old ships. One of them could take her far away, maybe even to safety, but deep in her heart, Vela knew she couldn't keep running forever. The smuggler hangar smelled like rust and forgotten battles. Old ships sat in silence, dust-covered and broken, as if waiting for ghosts to fly them. Again, Jack and Vela moved fast, hearts pounding, the sealed door behind them still echoing with Marcus's last words. They reached an old shuttle near the back, its hatch slightly open, flickering lights inside. Jack tapped the side panel, and the ship hummed weakly, systems trying to wake after years of sleep. "It'll have to do," he muttered. "We don't have time to be picky." Vela climbed in silently, her movements graceful despite the fear in her eyes. Jack followed, checking the control panel, blinking lights showing low fuel but enough for a short jump. As the engines warmed, Vela stared out the window at the shadows beyond the hangar wall. "I never thought I'd make it this far," she said quietly. Jack looked at her. "We're not safe yet." "No," she whispered, "but I feel something different now. I don't feel alone anymore." Jack wanted to say something, but alarms suddenly echoed through the hangar. A red light began flashing from the far wall, followed by the heavy stomp of boots. The Dominion had found them. He slammed the hatch closed and activated internal shields. "Hang on," he said, pulling the controls. The ship shook as it lifted off the ground, dust swirling around them. Outside, soldiers rushed into the hangar, but it was too late. The ship roared toward the ceiling, but just as they reached the upper doors, the power cut out. The ship dropped suddenly, slamming against the deck. Sparks flew, and Jack was thrown against the console. Vela rushed to him, helping him sit up. He groaned, bleeding from his forehead. "The fuel line, it's been cut." Before they could recover, the hatch was ripped open from the outside. 4 Dominion soldiers stormed in with rifles raised, shouting commands. Jack tried to shield Vela, but she stepped forward, hands raised slowly, her hood falling back. The soldiers froze, eyes widening. One of them gasped, "It's her, the lost heir." Jack's heart dropped as the lead soldier stepped closer. But then, to Jack's shock, the soldier lowered his weapon and knelt. "The Empire still lives," he whispered. "Forgive me, my queen." The others followed, kneeling one by one. Vela's eyes widened in disbelief. "You serve Zarathi?" The lead soldier nodded. "We were part of the 9th Legion, left behind after the betrayal. We went underground. We've waited years for a sign that someone survived." Vela looked down, her hands shaking. "I don't know if I can lead. I've been hiding for so long." Jack stood beside her. "You don't have to be perfect," he said. "Just be real. People will follow that." She took a deep breath, steadying herself, then looked back at the kneeling soldiers. "Help me fix this ship," she said, her voice steady now. "I'm not running anymore." Hours passed as they worked together, repairing the damaged systems, patching wires, and siphoning fuel from old cargo tanks. Jack watched as Vela moved among the soldiers, not as a scared girl, but as someone becoming something more. She asked questions, gave calm orders, and even smiled once. When the ship was finally ready, Jack pulled her aside. "There's something you need to know." She turned to him, curious. "What is it?" I used to work for the Dominion, he said quietly, guilt heavy in his voice. Long time ago. I didn't know what they really were at the start, but I stayed too long. I didn't do enough to stop them. Vela didn't say anything at first, her eyes searching his face. Why tell me now? She asked. Because you deserve the truth, Jack replied. Even if it costs me your trust. She looked down at her hands, the old scar on her wrist glowing faintly. Then she reached out and touched his arm. You helped me when no one else would. That matters more. Jack let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. They stood in silence for a moment before the lead soldier approached. It's time, Your Highness. Vela nodded, pulling her hood up, not to hide, but to shield against the wind outside as they boarded the ship. Jack looked back at the hangar one last time. So many secrets had been buried here, so many promises broken, but now, something new was beginning. The engines rumbled, this time stronger, and the ship lifted into the sky without delay. Vela stood near the front window, watching the stars come into view. Her voice was soft but full of meaning. I'm done hiding, she said. If they want to fight, they'll get one. Jack smiled as he sat beside her. Then let's show them what a worker and a queen can do. Together, they left the colony. Behind, not as strangers, but as something more. And far out in the black, the Dominion was about to learn that the flame of the Zarathi Empire still burned. The stars outside shimmered like cold diamonds as the old smuggler ship drifted toward Dock 7. Dock 7 was an abandoned refueling station on the edge of the colonial system. Officially shut down, it was now a quiet meeting place for traders, spies, and those who didn't want to be seen. Jack guided the ship through a narrow debris field, hands firm on the controls. Vela stood behind him, arms crossed, eyes sharp, her royal pendant hidden under her coat. The soldiers who once hunted her now worked to protect her, each of them carrying silent loyalty in their eyes. This place gives me a bad feeling, Vela said. Glancing at the flickering lights of the docking station, Jack nodded. Me too. But we need to refuel and get new transponders. If we want to leave the system without being tracked, this is our best shot. As the ship landed, the metal platform groaned beneath them. A light fog covered the dock floor and no welcoming crew approached. Jack grabbed his sidearm and motioned for two soldiers to come with him. Stay inside, he told Vela. We'll handle the deal. Vela hesitated but nodded. Be careful. Jack stepped into the cold air of Dock 7, boots echoing on metal. He made his way to a small office built into the wall of the platform, its door barely holding together. Inside, an old friend waited. Rix, a former comms officer turned black market tech dealer. Rix smiled wide, arms open. Jack Carter, still alive, still dumb. Jack smirked. Good to see you too. Word. Is you're moving something hot, Rix said, eyes narrowing. You need new codes and fuel, maybe a stealth grid. I can pay, Jack replied, holding out a small case of credits. No questions. Rix looked at the case, then back at Jack, his grin never fading. Deal, he said, shaking Jack's hand. But Jack noticed something. Rix's other hand tapping something under the table, fast and secretive. Jack's instinct screamed. He turned to the soldiers. Back to the ship. Now. But before they could move, the lights went red, alarms blaring across the dock. A voice crackled over the comms, cold and cruel. This is Dominion Command. Stand down and surrender the fugitive, Jack cursed, pulling his weapon as shots rang out from the catwalks above. Dominion enforcers poured in from all sides, blasters, raised armor black and polished. It was a trap, and Rix had sold them out. Back on the ship, Vela felt the floor tremble. One of her guards rushed in. They've been ambushed. We need to evacuate. Vela grabbed her cloak and ran to the hatch, but the ship was already surrounded. She looked out the window and saw Jack diving behind crates, firing back at the soldiers. He was bleeding from his arm, but still fighting. She turned to the pilot. Open the cargo ramp. Your Highness, it's too dangerous. The pilot began, but Vela cut him off. He's out there because of me, she said. Open it now. The ramp lowered, and she stepped into the chaos, moving like a shadow through smoke and gunfire. One of the Dominion soldiers spotted her and shouted, She's here. Capture her alive. Blasters turned her way. But before they could fire, metal crates around her twisted violently, forming a wall of steel. Her powers surged without hesitation, gravity bent under her control, weapons yanked from enemy hands. Jack looked up in awe as she moved across the battlefield like a force of nature. "Vela," he called out, blood on his face. She reached him, eyes glowing silver, and lifted him to his feet. "Can you walk?" she asked. "Barely," he replied, wincing. "But I'm not leaving you here." With the help of the soldiers who remained, they fought their way back toward the ship. Vela raised her hand, and the metal platform beneath them shifted, forming a rising path back to the ramp. Dominion officers shouted in confusion, unable to match her strange, ancient power. As the ship's engines roared back to life, Jack turned to look at Rix, who was crawling away from the fire. "You lied to me," Jack growled, raising his weapon. "I had no choice," Rix begged. "They paid more." Jack didn't shoot him. He just turned and walked away. "That's why you'll always be a rat," he said over his shoulder. Inside the ship, Vela placed her hand on the console, and the engines flared with new strength. The ship lifted fast, piercing through the dock ceiling, breaking free into the stars. Everyone was silent for a moment, catching their breath. Jack slumped into a chair, holding his arm. "That went well." Vela turned to him, her face calm but eyes full of fire. "No more running," she said. "We fight from now on." Jack nodded, pain in his voice but pride in his heart. "You've got soldiers now," he said, "and you've got me." Far below them, Dock 7 burned, and Dominion ships searched empty skies. But it was too late. The fire they feared had already escaped, and it was spreading. The ship drifted through deep space, dark and silent, except for the soft hum of the engine. Inside, the lights flickered low and the crew moved slowly, bandaging wounds and checking systems. The escape from Dock 7 had cost them. 2 of the loyal soldiers were gone, and Jack's arm was badly burned from blaster fire. Vela sat alone in the main chamber, her hood off now, face pale but calm. The metal pendant around her neck glowed, softly pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. She stared at her hands. At what they had done, she hadn't just defended them. She had bent metal, shifted gravity, and made enemies fall without touching them. "Is this who I am now?" She whispered, voice shaking. "I didn't know I could do that." Behind her, Jack entered slowly, his arm wrapped in bandages. "You saved us," he said, sitting beside her, wincing from the pain. "I saw what you did back there." "You didn't lose control." "I wasn't sure if I could hold it back," Vela replied. "That power, it's old. It was passed down through the royal bloodline, but I was never trained." Jack looked at her carefully. "Then maybe it's time you trained yourself." "Because we're not done yet." She turned to him, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "I'm not just a runaway anymore, am I?" Jack shook his head. "No, you're something much bigger." Later, Vela stood in the training hold of the ship, a small empty room once used for cargo. She raised her hand slowly, focused on a broken piece of plating in the corner. The air around it shimmered, and the metal began to float, trembling. She gritted her teeth, sweat forming on her brow. But the metal responded, bending gently under her will. Not wild, not destructive. Controlled. The lead soldier, Ronan, watched. From the doorway, arms crossed. "You're learning fast," he said, stepping in. "In the old days, royal heirs started training at age 5. You've done more in days than most did in years." Vela lowered her hand, breathing hard. "I'm not trying to be a queen," she said. "I just want to stop running." Ronan nodded. "Then lead us to something better." The ship's comms crackled, and Jack's voice came through. "We've got something," he said. "A signal. Old military code." They rushed to the bridge, where Jack pointed to a flashing beacon on the screen. "It's coming from Moon Theta 9, he said. "Uninhabited, but the signal says Zerathi survivors." Vela's breath caught. "Others?" Jack nodded. "Or it's a trap. But either way, we need to know." They changed course, moving quietly through unpatrolled space. The journey took 2 days, and in that time, Vela trained harder. She didn't sleep much, pushing herself to learn how to control the forces inside her. She learned how to sense metal through walls, how to shape it gently or with force. She learned how to feel the gravity fields around her and shift them just enough to move objects. Or defend herself. She wasn't perfect, but she was no longer afraid of her power. She was becoming who she was born to be. On the third day, Moon Theta 9 came into view, a rocky world covered in ash clouds and hidden caves. They landed near a ridge where the signal was strongest. Jack, Vela, and 2 soldiers stepped out into the cold wind. Weapons ready, hearts tense, they followed. The signal into a canyon, and there, behind a cracked rock wall, they found a hidden bunker. Inside were 5 alien figures, older, tired, but their eyes lit up when they saw her. "Princess Vela?" one of them whispered, falling to his knees. "We thought you were dead." They were surviving members of her mother's court, exiles who had escaped the palace during the fall. They had waited in hiding for years, believing no one had survived. Vela looked around at the bunker walls covered in old flags, carved prayers, and fading memories. She felt something inside her shift, not just sorrow, but duty. These people still believed in her. "Even after all this time, I'm not the girl I used to be," she said softly, "but I'm here now. I want to rebuild, start something new." One of the elders stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Then we follow you," he said, "until the fire rises again." That night, by a small fire inside the bunker, Vela sat with Jack and the others. The soldiers listened as the elders told stories of the old days. Vela didn't speak much, she just listened, watched, and remembered. Later, Jack found her staring at the stars above the canyon roof. "You all right?" he asked. "I feel heavier," she said, "but also stronger. I think I'm ready." "For what?" Jack asked. "To stop being afraid of who I am," she replied. "And to make them regret what they did to my family." Jack smiled. "Then I'd hate to be them." Far away, across the stars, the Dominion felt the ripple of something awakening. They didn't know it yet, but the girl they failed to silence was no longer hiding. She was learning, rising, and very soon, she would return fire with fire. Moon Theta 9 was silent when the message was sent, a short burst through a hidden frequency, one the Dominion thought was long dead. But now, it echoed through dark space, reaching ears that hadn't heard the name Zarathi in years. The message was simple. The flame lives. Vela stood at the center of the moon's bunker, surrounded by exiled elders, loyal soldiers, and a growing group of rebel sympathizers. They had come in secret shuttles, old warships, even mining rigs. Answering the call, one by one, they kneeled before her, not for her name, but for what she represented, a return of hope. Jack stood behind her, armor scorched but eyes proud. He had seen the girl in the gray hood become something far greater, not just a survivor, not just a royal, but a leader born in the fire of betrayal. "She's ready," one of the elders whispered. "And we are, with her." But far across the stars, the Dominion was already moving, the moment the message reached their outposts. A high commander slammed his fist on the table. "Burn that moon," he growled. "End the bloodline once and for all." 3 warships left hyperspace within hours, black like death, armed with plasma cannons and drone fleets. They locked. Onto Moon Theta 9, moving in fast. Back at the bunker, alarms screamed. Jack rushed to the console, eyes wide. Dominion destroyers incoming, 3 of them. Full weapons, full armor. Ronan, the lead soldier, tightened his gear. "We can't outrun them. They'll reach us before we even power up the ships." Vela stepped forward, her silver eyes glowing stronger than ever. "Then, we don't run," she said. "We make our stand here." "But we're outnumbered," Jack said. "We've got miners, freighters, and patched-up ships. We don't need to beat them in space." Vela replied. "We beat them on the ground." The rebels began to prepare. Old energy shields were activated, weapons handed out, tunnels sealed and booby-trapped. And in the center of it all, Vela knelt, hands pressed to the stone floor, her pendant glowing red-hot. She was reaching into the heart of the moon itself, into the ancient tech hidden deep beneath, power once used by her ancestors to control gravity and defend worlds. Now that power surged through her veins like fire. Above the surface, the Dominion warships opened fire. Blazing plasma tore into the ground, breaking open canyons and melting stone. Soldiers dropped onto the surface in black armor, sweeping forward with deadly precision. But then the ground shifted. Metal from old mining rigs rose like walls, bending and reshaping under Vela's command. The Dominion soldiers found themselves trapped in twisting corridors of steel and stone. Drones malfunctioned midair, dragged down by altered gravity fields. Jack fought beside Ronan using old tactics and fast hands. He had never seen anything like it. Vela walked through the battlefield untouched, her cloak billowing behind. Her blade stopped in midair. Bullets turned back on their senders. From the command ship above, the Dominion High Commander screamed into the comms, "What is this witchcraft?" But Vela was no witch. She was the last queen of a fallen empire, and she had returned. In one final surge, Vela raised both hands to the sky. The pendant around her neck shattered into light, and from the heart of the moon, a pulse of energy exploded upward like a burning sun. It struck the lead Dominion warship directly, short-circuiting every system. The engines exploded in blue fire and the ship cracked in half, falling into the canyon below. The remaining ships turned, retreating, engines flaring in panic. They had underestimated her, and now they were running. The battlefield grew quiet, smoke rising slowly into the air. Wounded were carried inside, but cheers began to spread among the rebels. They had won. Not just a battle, but a reason to believe again. Jack found Vela standing on a ledge, watching the last Dominion ship disappear. She looked tired but unbroken, her hair blowing in the wind. "You did it," he said softly, stepping beside her. "No," she replied, her voice firm. "We did it." He smiled. "You're not just a survivor anymore," she nodded. "I'm a spark. And from this spark, we build a flame that won't go out." Word of the victory spread fast. Colonies once silent began to whisper. Old allies began to move. Secret networks lit up. And for the first time in years, the Dominion felt fear. Vela returned to the bunker where her people waited. She stood tall before them, not in chains, not in shadows, but in armor forged from melted weapons, her own design, her own legacy. "I was hunted," she said. "I was hidden. But I will not be either anymore. This is not the end of the Zarathi Empire. This is the rebirth." The hall shook with cheers, fists raised, eyes bright. Beside her, Jack placed a hand over his heart. And together, in that forgotten place, the first spark of rebellion was lit. The worker girl with the hood was gone. In her place stood a queen, and the galaxy would never forget her name again.